Hey there, let's talk about Microsoft. If you've ever felt completely overwhelmed by just how many tools there are, well, you're definitely not alone. So think of this as your map. We're going to guide you straight to some of the most practical, most powerful tech in their entire ecosystem.
I mean, let's be real for a second. The Microsoft ecosystem is just huge. The source material for this actually calls it a mountain of information. And honestly, that's not an exaggeration at all. You've got everything from cloud services like Azure to these super deep system tools, and it's so easy to feel lost, right? Like, where do you even start?
Okay, so here's our mission for this explainer. It's pretty simple, really. We're going to cut right through all that noise. We're going to connect the dots between a few key technologies. And not just by telling you what they are. No, we're going to show you how they actually solve real-world, everyday problems that you might be facing.
All right, let's dive into our first topic, automating the cloud. Now, if you've ever managed any kind of cloud infrastructure, you know it can get crazy complex, like really fast. So the big question is, how do you get a handle on that complexity? How do you stop putting out the same fires again and again?
Well, the answer is this awesome tool called Azure Automation Runbooks. Think about it this way. Instead of manually clicking through the same boring tasks over and over, you write those steps down as code. And just like that, you've turned a manual chore into a reliable, repeatable recipe. It guarantees everything's done the same way every time, and man, does it save a ton of time.
But here's the kicker. What makes a runbook way more powerful than just a simple script is something called assets. You've got credentials, which lets you handle logins securely without ever typing a password into your code. Then there are variables for storing info you use all the time, and connections to easily link up to other services. And my favorite, schedules, so you can just set it and forget it for things like nightly maintenance. It's the whole shebang, a complete automation package.
Okay, so we've got our back-end processes automated. That's great. But what about the apps themselves? You know, you can build the most amazing web app, but the real test, the real challenge, is updating it without, breaking everything for your users.
You know how it used to be, right? Deploying an update was basically a high-stakes gamble. You just push it directly to production, cross your fingers, and hope for the best. And that often led to downtime. While the Azure way is so much smarter. It uses something called a deployment slot. Basically, you push your new code to a safe staging area, test it out in an identical environment, and then, and this is the magic part, you perform a zero downtime swap with a single click. Your users? They never even notice an update happened. It's seamless.
But what about those moments when your site suddenly gets slammed with traffic? What then? That's where Autoscale is an absolute lifesaver. It automatically adds more power, more resources based on CPU demands to keep everything running buttery smooth. And then, when things quiet down, it scales right back to save you money. It's literally performance on demand.
All right, so we've been talking a lot about the cloud. But a truly complete toolkit doesn't just live in a data center. It has to extend all the way down to the user's desktop. So let's shift gears and look at how we can secure and troubleshoot the actual devices people are using day in and day out.
Okay, let's paint a picture here. A real nightmare scenario that keeps IT folks up at night. An employee's laptop packed with sensitive company data gets lost. Or worse, stolen. What happens to all that information? Is it just out there? Well, here's the good news. If you're using a tool like BitLocker, the answer to what happens is nothing. Absolutely nothing. Because BitLocker encrypts the entire hard drive. It basically scrambles all the data, making it completely unreadable to anyone who doesn't have the key. It is an absolutely essential defense against physical theft.
Now, what if you need to dig deeper into a system problem? For that, we have the legendary sysinternal suite. And get this is a quote from our source material. You don't even have to install them. You can run these incredibly powerful diagnostic tools directly over the web. How convenient is that for some quick, on-the-fly troubleshooting?
All right, on to our final section. And this one tackles a problem that, let's face it, exists pretty much everywhere. From a single spreadsheet on a desktop to a massive corporate database. You have mountains and mountains of data, but what does it all mean? How do you turn all those raw numbers into a story that actually makes sense?
This is exactly where Power BI Desktop shines. And it's a free tool, by the way. It's your starting point for connecting to hundreds of different data sources, cleaning up all that messy data, and then building these beautiful, visual stories that turn raw numbers into something anyone, and I mean anyone, can understand.
The real magic, though, the secret sauce, comes from something called DAX. That's Power BI's formula language. This quote here says it all. DAX is what lets you create calculations that aren't even in your raw data to begin with. We're talking about things like year-over-year growth or a product's percentage of total sales. This is how you find those really valuable, hidden insights.
And the whole workflow is actually pretty straightforward. It's basically a three-step process. First, you connect to your data, no matter where it lives. Second, you model and analyze it using those powerful tools, especially DAX. And finally, step 3, you build and share what you've found using these awesome interactive visualizations.
So, let's just do a quick recap of everything we've covered. We've basically looked at 4 key pieces of a super powerful toolkit. We have Azure Automation for taming the cloud, Azure Web Apps so you can deploy with confidence, desktop tools like BitLocker to lock down your security, and of course, Power BI to make sense of all your data.
And that really brings us to the final question I want to leave you with. Looking at all these tools and the different problems they solve, which one will you pick up first? Which one of these just jumped out at you? Which part of your world could use a little bit of this power right now?